I think don't try and go for the Rolls-Royce kind of solution. Start with a very small scope, be very clear about what your requirements are, and before you go and buy something, actually sit down with a vendor and get them to prove to you that it can meet your requirements.
Long time. Thank you for joining me in this conversation around identity security. It's always good to catch up with the veterans of the industry and people who've been around cybersecurity for long. So for our viewers, it would be great if you could introduce yourself and tell us a bit more about what you do as part of your role.
So my name is Richard Harrison. I'm the head of cyber and architecture now at Foodstuffs South Island in New Zealand. We're a large grocery retailer, run a few hundred supermarkets across the South Island. And we're a cooperative, so slightly different business model than most people will be perhaps used to. But one of sort of New Zealand's most well-known companies, been around for over 100 years in various forms. Yep. As I say, I lead the cybersecurity and architecture functions in our digital services team.
Excellent. Thank you. Can you tell us a bit, what does identity security mean in a retail shop like Foodstuff, as you mentioned?
Well, we've been on a bit of an identity journey over the last couple of years. So we have, I guess, really tried to understand the current state of our identity landscape, and then put in place a strategy and a roadmap to address some of the challenges that we've got. I think not unlike many organizations, we found highly manual processes, very fragmented processes, user lifecycle management challenges, probably not enough people trying to do too much work, and therefore things like user access reviews slip. They don't always get prioritized because the day-to-day work carries on. So privileges start to escalate, separation of duties starts to dilute, and you start to get toxic combinations, but you don't have the visibility. And I think one of the biggest challenges with identity is having visibility into your current state, because unless you've got that visibility, you don't know what you're solving for, and you can't really define the requirements that you need to manage identities in a holistic way. So that was always our views, that we want to try and get control over the entire enterprise landscape. We're a big SAP house, so we've got both that SAP side of things and the more business focused traditional sort of Microsoft Active Directory landscape. So we want to try and bring those two together in some consistent, holistic way, so that we're managing identities across the piece, and bring in as much automation as we possibly can in that sort of the time frame of the strategy.
Excellent. Yeah, that's a very good point that you mentioned, that it's not just about having the tools, it's having that overall risk visibility across the board. And you mentioned SAP. Some people miss the fact that not everything is just Microsoft. There is a bigger and broader picture that needs to be painted here.
that was a key principle from the start, was how can we, what can we do to get that global view, and not have two separate, sources of the truth, if you like,
True, true,
um,
true.
which I think would confuse both users and make operational management of it that much harder.
100%. Yeah, yeah, 100%. Agree. Now, it's interesting. You did allude into some of the challenges, but let's have a bit of a deep dive into what are those challenges, and perhaps sort of high level mitigation strategies that you guys put in place to overcome them.
I think visibility was one. Um, Risk from unmanaged identities and unmanaged access. Whilst we do have, multi-factor authentication in place, I'm sure that there are probably still cases where that's not the case. So again, that visibility, will give us the ability to sort of plug those gaps, plug those holes. The other key one for us was the SAP landscape and getting insight into role-based access, and how we can, I guess, take a zero trust type approach to it, in the sense of just having the right amount of access at the right time to the right things in order to do the job, and no more than that. And reducing the amount of privileged users as much as possible. And one of the solutions there will be just-in-time elevated rights, so that we don't have to have users with godlike powers existing all the time. We can just, if you need to do something, then we can elevate the right amount of privilege. You do the job, and then we take the privilege away. So I think that's the goal anyway. And I think we found solutions to help us do that, and we're just in the process of trying to execute that. I mean, the other challenges in the industry, I mean, things that I guess have pricked people's ears up in recent months have been the big retail hacks across overseas in the UK. And clearly that was linked to some identity related challenges, social engineering on service desks, taking advantage of the service desk mentality, which is, I want to help you, I need to solve your problem as fast as you possibly can, because that's what they do. And then the third party identity challenges, I guess, as well, right? Yeah. Because that was how they gained access. So how do we connect those two things up in a way that doesn't cause friction?
Yeah. 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 No, 100%. Totally agree with you. Very good point.
The principle actually is minimizing friction.
True. How do you think automation in this space can help teams like your team in having that risk visibility, but also minimizing the mean time to detect and mean time to remediate as best as possible? Everyone talking about AI and machine learning, and how it could be leveraged in your industry in specifically identity security.
Sorry, I missed the first bit but was it how AI can do that?
Automation and AI,
automation, yeah. I think automation is where to start, rather than artificial intelligence. I think there's a lot of hype. There's a lot of rebranding what already exists within products as AI. So yeah, our view is it's automation. good analytics, threat hunting, that visibility into what might be, I guess, normal behavior versus abnormal behavior. I guess that's where some of the artificial intelligence might come in terms of giving you that monitoring and alerting
Machine learning
machine
components.
learning component, which is not new. um, so I think that's where it will help us to again get insight, and probably in time, I would imagine, to remediate stuff. So if you're confident in the output that actually it has found something that's abnormal, can we automate remediation of that, or disabling an account, or isolating it from the network from time, depending on what you see. So I think that's how and where it will potentially help us in the long term.
Makes sense.
But it's not a silver bullet, and certainly I don't see generative AI doing too much in that space. I heard a good kind of description of it yesterday. It's a non-deterministic technology, whereas we need to be very deterministic when we're dealing with security. So probably the more machine learning type approaches, narrow AI will assist.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. That definitely makes sense. I mean, we all hope that we get to the stage that AI is there to help us at least in this area in terms of identity security when it comes to, let's say, critical infrastructure and that deterministic approach on what needs to take place. But yeah, 100% machine learning is key at this point of time. Now, if there was improvement and you could, let's say, if there was like a wish list or ideal scenario, what would be that ideal world for you that when you close your laptop, you say, well, you know what, from identity security perspective, we are very happy, in a very happy space because this ideal scenario is in place?
The ideal scenario, I guess, is that we have business enablement, right? We can enable self-service functions where it's appropriate. We can empower collaboration across the business. We can improve user experience from an onboarding perspective, and also from an offboarding. It's a different user, as in those people who have responsibility for ensuring that people leave the organization in a systematic way can be assured that the user
Offboarding and onboarding,
disabled, and all the accounts that username and password will have access to are dealt with. And we provide access at the right time to the right things when people want them and need them, right? So that's the business enablement side of stuff.
True.
And then operational efficiency, and in an ideal world, excellence. But who define what that is? But reducing manual administration, streamlining business processes, having centralized access controls in place, and a single source of the truth. So consolidating all of those identity repositories, and in our case, that will hopefully be our HR system, where we'll have as many of those user identities as possible. That will be the source of truth for new starters and people leaving, including contractors and other third parties who we would have. and that will help us to reduce cost and avoid cost over time. So those are kind of two ones, and then obviously you've got then the risk side of stuff, the security and the risk side of stuff. You know, we can detect access risk, make sure we've got the right controls in place.
It's a big wish list.
Oh, I know, but you asked for it, and but that's those are, I suppose, are the business drivers. Those are the things that we are working towards. Now, will we achieve it all in the, no, it will take a long, it's a continuous journey, and we won't be perfect, from day one. But as we start to roll out our strategy in the next 12 months, certainly for our core applications and core systems, we'd like to be able to get to a point where in 12 months time we have automated onboarding and offboarding, for core systems, and we've done that kind of user, that role-based review, and consolidated access down to what it needs to be, enforcing things like separation of duties, or at least we understand where we've got those risks and the business is happy to accept them, because again, there are going to be roles where you can't necessarily,
you can't win against the business. Yeah, true.
Unless you go and recruit a whole load of new people, which the business is not going to do. But at least you've got insight into the risks and you know what to monitor for.
Yeah. No, that definitely makes sense. One last question for you. Where do you see this whole identity security goes in the next 5 to 10 years, given the all advancement of AI and cloud and zero trust and all of this knowledge that we have to date? Where do you see this goes in the next 5 to 10 years?
Sadly, I don't think identity is one of the areas of security that hasn't really changed in I don't know how many years, right? We still use a username and a password primarily, right? And I don't see, I know people have tried biometrics and, those things can help, but in an organization, let's take healthcare, for example, where there are people sharing devices, nurses on a ward sharing devices.
Yeah.
It doesn't work, right? Having been in that situation and tried, it just does not work. Devices are not set up to have more than one or two biometric.
So you're not expecting a massive shift in the trends as we speak?
No, I think there will be more moves towards possibly passwordless stuff with certificate-based approaches, key-based approaches, device based authentication. But even that's not seamless, and again, you have to think carefully about where you deploy that in a business if it's going to cause friction in the line somewhere. So
True.
You always have to think about what's the security risk versus the business risk of keeping the operations flowing as much as possible. Better insights, maybe. I think perhaps more visibility. I've seen some products out there that are starting now to look at identity-based approaches to data, posture, security, and linking those two things together much more tightly, which looks interesting. But I'm not seeing a huge amount of
change
innovation in the identity space at this moment. I think identity verification, national identity systems, digital identity verification will probably come to the fore a bit more. certainly in New Zealand, we're looking at that at a national level, on a kind of decentralized approach to that.
Yeah.
Other countries are taking a more centralized approach. So that will be interesting to see how that plays out. But again, it's a hard. How do you prove who you are? How do you
Yeah.
how do you prove you've got the right to? It's been paper documents primarily, and all we're doing is moving those paper documents to a digital format. It's still very it's a very challenging kind of
There's a long way to go still in this area, you
area
think?
to address.
Yeah. That makes sense. If there is anything that you would like to share as a word of wisdom with your peers in the same industry, go for it. Otherwise, I would like to thank you for your time and appreciate all of the inputs.
Yeah, I think don't try and go for the Rolls Royce kind of solution. Start with a very small scope. Be very clear about what your requirements are, and before you go and buy something, actually sit down with a vendor and get them to prove to you that it can meet your requirements. Right? Don't just go down the old traditional procurement route of fill in my spreadsheet with all your requirements, to which every vendor will reply, yes, we can do it. Get them to prove to you that they can do it before you commit and buy, because I think there's a lot of vendors out there who and they're all the same. I'm not picking on anyone in particular, but there's a lot of vendors out there who will overstate perhaps
Have a strong marketing.
What their capabilities are, and then then you run into challenges, and this is where identity projects in particular can go off track, become hugely expensive, and unbudgeted expense. So be very clear about what you're trying to achieve. Be very clear that the solutions you pick can actually deliver on what you want, and start with a small scope. Don't try and fix everything all at once, and do it gradually over time.
100%. That's great. That's great advice, and thank you. Thanks for sharing that. I would like to appreciate all of the great insight that you provided from your journey and the challenges and everything. And yeah, thank you for the time that you spent talking to me.
No worries. It's been great. Thanks very much.
Excellent. Thank you.
Cheers, Marco.